Welcome to Impact TV, a corporate venture video series in collaboration with the Kauffman Fellows. Hi, my name is Jack Crawford, a founding general partner at Impact Venture Capital. Alongside with my Impact colleague, Pat Bumpus, and my Kauffman co-chair, Alessandro Santro, I'm excited to welcome Nicolas Sauvage, the president of TDK Ventures. Nicolas, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Jack, and thank you for having me today. Really appreciate it.
I'm excited to see the TDK office there. In addition to innovation and corporate venture, it looks like you're running a media center there. It reminds me a little bit of the NASDAQ center that I've seen in New York and San Francisco.
Well, the interview is on a Wednesday, which happens to be the team day where everyone comes together. So yes, you get to see a few of them behind me.
Well, let's see, the last time you and I saw each other, it was in Tokyo at the GCV conference. You did a fantastic job interviewing executives from TDK and providing an overview of TDK Ventures. I thought it was interesting the way in which you described almost an internal communication strategy leveraging data visualization. Just as we kick things off, I was hopeful that you would just talk about that for just a second because I found it quite compelling.
Yeah, I think one of the challenge for corporate VCs is they need to be financial and strategic. Financial is so easy to measure, it's numbers. But when it comes to strategic value, everyone is challenged. How do you show the strategic value? And most times people say, well, you get to see it when you see it. But before that, you can't actually see it. And so I wanted to give some ideas about how we did it at TDK Ventures, which is how we visualize the fit with a long-term strategy by showing how it maps with the different investments we were making, or how in one view, we can see how many engagements between our portfolio companies and the various TDK teams, but also with some kind of coloring to show how it progressed from an introduction to an evaluations, to a design in, to a design win. And so this type of checkerboard, what we call checkerboard because it looks like a chess, but much bigger, I think is helpful because inside TDKs, people would wonder, what are we doing? What's the strategic value? And if you find ways to visualize this, it really helps to then explain it. And so I wanted to share that with a full CVC community, the checkerboard, so that if anyone is listening, is interested, I'm actually open sourcing that checkerboard so it can be used by anyone.
I'd like to see that for sure. I do remember one description you provided about companies trying to establish their way as a market leader and get to the top of a mountain, and corporate ventures sort of, instead of just thinking about getting to the top of that mountain, maybe taking a helicopter and flying to the next mountain and the next mountain. I thought that was quite an interesting sort of visual that helped to understand the concept around innovation and dominating different industries. Obviously this visualization technique has served you well because as I understand it, in 2022 you were listed as global top 20 power list for corporate venture capital. So congratulations on that recognition. I'm sure your ability to present a vision actually helped you to secure that recognition.
Well, thank you. And I want to go back to that visualization of the mountains because it's not for me to take credits. It's actually Jesper Sorensen during a Stanford class that presented it. And I think the storytelling around this is really important. If you think about corporations, their job is to go to the top of the mountain. That's called exploitation. And top of the mountain could be profit, revenue, customer delight, contribution to society through the products they deliver. But it's going to the top and you have other competitors trying to go to that top. And the corporate VC, if it's an exploration mission, which is not all CVCs, but quite a few of them, it's actually taking this tiny helicopter, which is a very cheap way to go and explore other mountains. And it's very foggy because you don't see very far. So you don't know if it's a big mountain or a small mountain. You don't know if it's hostile or if it's welcoming you. But with that little helicopter, which is a CVC, you get to learn about this new peak. Then you can come back to the corporation and say, you know what, this is a great mountain to go. We can go and build a new camp. Or actually, this is a terrible place. We shouldn't go. It's like a red ocean type of market. And so this is the exploration. And what Jesper Sorensen was explaining is a company is always looking at exploitation, but they don't see the disruptions coming. And this tiny helicopter going where the disruptions could come from is such an effective way to know when disruptions is coming, and rather than fearing it, to embrace it.
It's very helpful visualization because it embraces agility, which is required to identify new innovation. So I appreciate that. Let's talk about TDK for a little bit because, obviously TDK Ventures affiliated with TDK. TDK, an iconic company, been around for 90 years. Most people who are less familiar with the company might just view it as, oh, well, didn't they make those cassette tapes? And, oh, that was kind of interesting. How are they innovating? Can you sort of bring us up to date from sort of, cassette tapes to today, how TDK has evolved and talk a little bit about your organization?
So TDK is a Japanese company. It started about 90 years ago. It's always been about material science. So the DNA is all about material science. What's interesting, you mentioned the cassette, which is a B2C business, but it started as a B2B. And so if you think about the companies that had to go through a B2B to B2C back to B2B, apart from Nokia, I don't know big companies that have done this type of pivots. And the cassette, I have to tell you, we have moved on. So it's one of these pivots where clearly cassette is zero revenue, at least for the audio side. So it's a company that has proven to be agile, to stay close to the DNA of material science and the competencies that goes with it, and yet manage to grow the revenue over time. And the way they've done it is to actually have both organic and inorganic growth. The organic growth is, of course, the obvious thing to do, but the inorganic growth has been very successful. And the way of doing this is by identifying what they call the king of the hill, which companies are still very early stage that could become market leader in the future. And they've done it with ATL, which is a very big market leader for battery for consumer product. They've done it with EPCOS. They did it for my own company that I joined, InventSense. And so if you think about TDK today, I can't imagine what we will be in 10 to 20 years.
The other thing I read about TDK Ventures in particular is that you're looking at it's sort of, how to engage and learn from various stakeholders, including going through a formal process with regard to a net promoter score. I thought that was actually quite interesting. And, we've certainly interviewed our LPs and our entrepreneurs, and obviously we're constantly talking to corporate venture groups. But I thought this idea of a corporate venture group putting together an NPS score was quite interesting. Could you talk a little bit more about, how you do that, which stakeholders you sort of engage, and then how that shapes your actions?
Yeah, I think I should start first with the core values of TDK Ventures because that comes from that. So we call it code of conduct because it's a play word with CODE. C is contribution to society. So everything we do has to be about contributing to society or to the planet. O is one team reaching for the sky, which is the way we work as a team. D is for delivering deep insights. And that's not just to deliver deep insights to our mothership, but actually even to our co-investors. Or publicly through Medium articles or other blog posts. And E is entrepreneurs first. And the way we describe it is we see the entrepreneurs as our customers. And so it really matters for us to make sure that whenever we aim to add value, we actually do add value, and not from our perspective, but from their perspective. And I have a background in engineering, but then sales. And I have not found a better proxy to delivering value and to be validated than doing a net promoter score. We've adapted the question because the NPS score, the NPS question is typically from 1 to 10, how likely would you recommend this product to a friend and family? Here, what we do is we always ask the same question from 1, never, to 10, absolutely. How likely would you recommend TDK Ventures to another entrepreneur? Talk about a high bar. It's splitting from an entrepreneur to another entrepreneur. And we ask the same questions also to our co-investors. In this case, it's how likely would they recommend TDK Ventures to an entrepreneur they have invested in or they're thinking to invest in. And that is such a strong proxy on, have we delighted the entrepreneurs to the point where they won't say TDK Ventures was just money, but they will go out of their way to say, wow, thanks to TDK Ventures, they move the needle in A, B, and C for my business. And because this is one of our KPI to have this net promoter score, it also drives everyone's behaviors and actions to make sure that we do add value versus pushing what would be terrible to do, which is to keep pushing services to our portfolio companies. We only want to add value at the right time and not too early and not too late. And so this Net Promoter Score, I think the score itself is actually not that important, if we are honest, but the fact that we ask is important. But then we have two open questions that comes afterwards. You're asking about methodology. One is, what did we do well for you? And it's amazing how much information we collect from that, which helps us to know where to double down. And the third question is, what could we have done better for you? And again, it's amazing how much information we get just by these open questions. And what we're doing at TDK Ventures is we're building our team as a consequence of what our portfolio companies are telling us they wish to see. And when we did the first NPS survey, which was more than 2 years ago, they told us, please help us with marketing. So what we did was we start to recruit a marketing principal who's helping our portfolio companies with marketing, with press releases, with how to choose a marketing agency. The year after, when the NPS survey came back, they said, please help us with recruiting senior people into our company. Then we created a function called recruitment principal to do just that. And so I just want to wrap this by saying that if you think about the entrepreneurs as your customers, you're more likely to think about how to add value to them. And if you do that well, you're going to shape the team and the skill set in your team in the right way.
I think that feedback loop is fascinating. You know, from your career at OpenPlug and then NXP, was it, you know, is that where you sort of fine-tuned sort of the data visualization techniques and MPS, or were there other things that you took from your efforts at those companies as you rolled into TDK Ventures, and something that has been useful as you now play a leadership role with corporate venture?
I have to say, I feel like nearly every part of my career has led to what I feel I'm getting really good at doing corporate VC. But the NPS come from my experience at NXP. And it's interesting because most people think they know their customers. When you're in sales or even you're in a VC, you believe you know your customer. You know your entrepreneurs. But actually just asking, it's unbelievable first how much information you get from asking questions, but then you can take actions. And when you take actions, then next time you ask the NPS survey, and we do it once a year, they know that you have listened. They know you're taking actions. And so when I was in sales and we were doing this NPS survey, all my sales team were basically saying, we don't need to send this survey. We already know our customers. I said, let's do it and see. And it's unbelievable how much information we had, which they had no idea. And it's basically, if you think about a customer, you have 3 or 4 people that you actually don't know if they're promoters or detractors. You actually want to know that. And it's the same for the portfolio companies, where maybe something I haven't mentioned is we have a minimum requirement of 3 people in each portfolio company when we ask. We just don't ask the CEO, which of course we are building a good intimacy, but we actually want to ask more people inside the portfolio company. And that gives us a really rich view about how we've been helping them on the technical side, the commercial side, the go-to-market, the customer front. All of that you get with just one email that takes 10 minutes to respond for the entrepreneur. And then later, once we finalize our action plan, we go back to them and say what we're going to do about it. So I would say if there's one thing I took away from my career is this customer-centric view about let's ask and let's build an action plan according to it, and then let's close the loop.
Well, a pattern that I'm seeing is that the leaders in the corporate venture space are going from passive roles with the entrepreneurial community and the co-investment community to more active roles. I'd also say that, from a passive participation from an investment standpoint in a Series C or Series D, more and more are moving earlier stage. And from our discussions and some of the research we've done on TDK Ventures, it seems like there's a heavy focus on earlier stage investing as part of your thesis. And then also what I think you describe as hard tech. And so when I think of early stage, I think of a completed product and maybe early, revenues, maybe the beginnings of some revenues. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how you define early stage. And then also when I think of hard tech, our team talks about that like advanced materials, material science, some of those areas, some that are a little bit more capital intensive. It'd be interesting for you to talk about hard tech and how you think about it. So make a few comments about early stage in your definition, and then maybe comment on hard tech.
First, maybe I think it's important to say that early stage is a consequence of the why we exist. And the why we exist is basically in two different sides. One is that we are clearly the exploration mission of TDK. We want to look at where the next disruption will come from, understand it, embrace it. So that's first the mission. The second thing that we are doing is to make sure that we can move the needle. We can really move the needle for our entrepreneurs. And if it's a series D or E or F, I think our ability to move the needle is so much smaller. If we arrive when the startup is just 10 PhDs, like we did for MetaLens, or it's just 10 people in Ascend Elements, and we find ways to de-risk their technology, to bring them a go-to-market, to bring the right syndicate, which we call Dream Syndicate process, all of that will move the needle for these startups. And so we have not decided to be early stage because that's what we want to do, but because this is fitting with the why of TDK Ventures, and because we want to move the needle for these entrepreneurs. And so if I look at the number, I think every single investments we've made has been seed, A and B, except two exceptions. And these two exceptions is because inside the company, even though they were later stage, they had a project which was early stage where we could move the needle. So Gencell was an example where it was a late stage company, but they had a green ammonia project inside the company where TDK could bring a lot of value. So we invested. And maybe that's actually about an important distinction. At TDK Ventures, we never say deals. We call them projects. So we are not transactional. We are really looking at every startups we meet is a lives of one entrepreneur, a dream of an entrepreneur. So we call them project. And just that words change the way we think about how we communicate with entrepreneurs, how we engage with them, and how we think about adding value to them.
TDK Ventures is operating as an independent fund or investing off the balance sheet. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the structure of the fund itself. And then also many corporate venture groups are getting a fair amount of autonomy, but some are still looking at business unit sponsorship. Are they getting buy-in, leveraging the due diligence capabilities of business units? Maybe you could just talk a little bit about the structure and how you collaborate with some of your business units.
Yeah, so we are a separate company, California Incorporated. We have a first fund of $50 million, which is fully deployed now, or nearly fully deployed. Fund 2 is $150 million. We make capital calls like normal companies. For Fund 1 and Fund 2, at 50% reserve for follow-on investments. I think as we move forward and we invest more in CapEx intensive business and climate tech, I think we might increase the 50% maybe to 60% reserve. Now, back to your point about needing sponsorship. I think the secret, if you can do it, is to design the corporate VC in a way where you don't need sponsorship, but you behave like you do. But what I mean is that you can't have a need for sponsorship that would slow you down. You need to be able to invest at the speed of a financial VC. But you need to behave in a way like you want to have buy-in from the TDK teams, because the portfolio companies are really good for them to engage. And here I have this concept. I don't like the word win-win engagement. It's very weak for me to say win-win. And that comes from my sales background again. I like to call it equal win, which means that for both sides, it's about equal value to have the engagement. The problem with a win-win engagement is that most times, we don't say it, but most times it's a small win and a very big win for one side. Let's say the startup has a small win and the corporation has a big win. Guess what? 2-3 years down the line, whoever has a small win will leave, and whoever thought they were going to get the big win has nothing. And so what we're trying to do is to really make sure that it has equal value on both sides. And so that equal win mindset goes a long way.
As our firm does research on the corporate venture industry, we've engaged a lot with the corporate with global corporate venturing, with the Kauffman Fellows organization, with the National Venture Capital Association, and then attended sort of alternative investment conferences like AltsLA down in Southern California that included a lot of corporates. The patterns that we're seeing include sort of some interest from a strategy standpoint, clearly some interest from a return standpoint, financial returns, and then also impact. I found it interesting that you were color coding your portfolio in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And I see more and more corporations embracing the SDGs, sort of going away from strategically responsible investments, which were sort of what not to invest in. Even going away from ESG a little bit because it doesn't, embrace or include some of the, climate aspects and healthcare aspects at the depth that some would like. But SDGs seem to be sort of embraced in a broad way. And I wondered, sort of how that was influencing your investment selection. And I thought it was very interesting that from a portfolio management standpoint, you were color coding by SDGs. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys have leaned in there?
It's actually first, framework of SDGs is so good. I really recommend everyone to use it to think through an investment. From our very, very first investment, the first investment proposal we made, the cover was already having the SDG included. So every time we make an investment proposal, we actually explain why it matters for these different SDGs. And it's interesting because most people, when they go to an investment proposal, the cover doesn't really have information and they go straight to slide 2. But the slide 1 is actually why we believe it actually contributes to some SDGs. And there are times where we are actually challenging ourselves. It looks like an amazing investment, but is it really contributing to society? And if it doesn't, then actually we do not invest. And the way we think about it is we have 3 investment criteria. There is a financial return investment, which is basically we're looking for any investments we make to have the potential to be a fund returner. The second one is, can we actually bring strategic value? And here it's more of a giving strategic value than just seeking to receive. And the third one is contribution to society. And if we were to score 1 to 10 each of them, if one was less than, let's say, 8.5 or 9, we just don't invest, even if the other 2 would be 10 and 10. And so contribution to society is something that comes across all our portfolio. And that's probably something you've seen from our website is you can pick any of our portfolio company and they all have something to add either to society or to the planet.
And then would you view it as a third, meaning a third of your attention or efforts are focused on financial, a third on strategic, or a third on impact? Or do you sequence them, meaning it has to be a financially viable investment opportunity, then it has to be strategic, and then if it's both of those, you make sure that it also includes an impact-oriented objective like one of the SDGs?
They all have to be a 9 or 10 out of 10. It's as simple as that. We're not going to invest if one of the 3 investment criteria is weak or even just good. We are and it also probably comes with why we only have 29 investments to date. We have seen more than 5,000 startups, so we are probably saying yes to 1 when we say no to 150. But I think it matters because every single portfolio company, we're going to spend so much efforts to make sure we help them. And we have this scaling team, for example, in TDK Ventures, whose job is just to help our portfolio company at the right time. We charge nothing for the scaling team, and it could be help on marketing, legal, recruitment, financial, non-dilutive financing. All of that comes for free. It has to be, we have to feel good that it's contributing to society, we can bring strategic value to them, and they could be fund returner.
As you're engaging with these founders, is there anything in particular that you're looking for with regard to qualities or character traits? I mean, oftentimes our team talks about the importance of sales skills, the importance of industry experience. Are they coachable? Are they active listeners? We talk about some of those, almost skill sets and personality sort of characteristics. How do you think about, what would you say to founders that are looking to approach team, the types of things that you're drawn to?
So my answer would probably be different from some of my investment directors. So I'm also looking for each investment director to come with their own conviction about what makes an investment the right investment. But if I was to say I want to meet entrepreneurs where they feel that what they are doing right now has to happen, there's a very strong why now. It's going to be their mission for the rest of their lives. And so, for example, if they come with we could sell this startup in 3 to 5 years to this company, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm really looking for entrepreneurs that wants to change the world, contribute to society. They are deeply expert in the space they are, and that's why they have an unfair advantage, and they have an ability to succeed. And they really want that commitment to be supported by the right investors.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think, it's easy to go through, billion-dollar market, great technology, some customer traction, smart team. But I think once you start to, deepen the relationship with the entrepreneur and figure out what's really motivating them over the long haul, you start to, understand, in a sense, whether they're in a position to create value and be the type of company that you want to invest in. Yep. So yeah, your comments are very interesting to me. One of the things that our firm is doing is constantly having conversations like the one you and I are having now, trying to learn about the industry sector focus, about the acquisition appetite of different companies that are out there. We're creating a bit of a corporate intelligence platform, and we've had successful co-investments with Applied Materials and SoftBank and Zoom and Intel and Baidu and Yamaha and a number of others at the corporate level. How do you work with traditional, corporate? How does TDK Ventures work with the traditional corporate venture groups and traditional VC firms as co-investors, or maybe as exchanging ideas on market insights or sourcing?
In a way, the way I've described entrepreneurs is probably going to be the same for co-investors. We are looking for investors, whether it's VCs or CVCs, who are so passionate about contribution to society, they want to move the needle, they are deeply expert in the space, and they actually challenge us in the way we are thinking about the space, as well as we have an ability to share what we learn. And so I think the ideal investors, partners, are those where we can have deep, challenging discussions, where we can try to validate or invalidate our view of what will come in the future. And when we end up with this type of investors, then actually we can create beautiful syndicates. I'll give you the example of the first startup where we led an investment. That was Verdagy. It was a green hydrogen electrolyzer company. We had just concluded, and that was our investment director, Anil, had just concluded a deep exploration about that space. And he had concluded that there is no startups that actually meet the requirements that we want to see, that can scale, that can get to the $1 per kilogram. So there was some KPIs that we had identified. And then we talked to Customer-centric Ventures, and we actually really engaged deeply with them on the technical level. And they say, well, I can see you've really done your research. Let me introduce you to Verdagy. We met with them, we built conviction. Once we built conviction, what we did is we also shared our due diligence and our deep exploration report with other firms which we believed could help them, like go-to-market with Doral or BHP, which we invited, or Temasek, because we thought they would be really good for them to then move to the next round, which is just closed. And we built that syndicate that was all about helping Verdagy to go to the next inflection point. And so maybe that's something that most VCs don't do or don't want to do or is afraid to do. I'm not sure why, but we have zero issues to share our full deep explorations reports with our VC partners.
Well, I saw that you're starting to publish them in your website, which I found interesting, on energy, computing, mobility, healthcare tech. And I thought that was interesting. Is part of it just market insight exchange and developing a sort of a collaborative strategy with the broader ecosystem?
So it's interesting. So I actually don't know why, but no VC says what they are working on right now. So they have a website that gives a high swimming lanes type of areas. We actually thought about how do we make sure that everyone knows what we are looking at right now, whether it's quantum computing or green hydrogen or whatever it is. And by putting it on our website, and it's tdkventures.com/explorations, we are basically saying, this is what Tina is doing it right now. This is what Anil is looking at right now. This is what Andrew is looking at right now. This is what Sid is looking at right now. And it's a signal to both our partners, but also entrepreneurs to know this is what we are looking at. And part of it was also the discomfort I had to say no to entrepreneurs, because we would say, no, that's not what we are looking at right now, which always feels like an empty sentence. It's something you could tell everyone. But now what we can say is this is not something we're looking at right now. You can see the explorations we are doing now. And we feel that it gives the right signal and it removes any friction. The friction today, if we didn't have that, would be every VC partners call us and say, what are you looking at? They just go on the website, they realize that Andrew is working on this mobility topic. That's what I want to invest in. Then they can call Andrew and start the discussions already. So I'm hoping that this is a good inspiration for others to also start sharing what they are looking at right now.
I really like that strategy because I can tell you in the venture industry, it feels like many investors are in a reactive mode. I mean, we look at about 3,000 investment opportunities each year, and it's easy to get into sort of respond mode where you're just reacting at the things that you're seeing. And what you've done is taken a bit of a proactive approach to say, no, we're going to create an investment map and we're going to lean into these 5, 6, 7 areas and try and get smart on the space. And I think that's really thoughtful. With regard to industry sectors, outside of the ones that we've mentioned, I mean, it's kind of hard to ignore, corporate metaverse applications. It's kind of hard to ignore generative AI. But if there's anything that really excites you over the next couple of years, are there 1 or 2 industry sectors where you have a sense that this could really reshape innovation like we've seen before with the internet or with iPhone, or everybody's sort of forecasting what's next? What are the 1 or 2 industry sectors that you're most excited about?
Well, first, I should say I'm excited about every topics we have right now, which is so many. But if there is one which I want us to double down, it's going to be around decarbonization, energy generation, energy storage. I think there is so much we could do that will get us to a greener planet quicker. We just invested in a nuclear fusion company, for example. We invested in lithium extraction company in Australia. We invested in metal recycling company in Canada. And I just feel like we're just scratching the surface about how much more good we can do, leveraging all the TDK expertise that we have to help these startups becoming more successful more quickly with less risk.
Thanks for that. All right, so they're telling me we have about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to go to the rapid fire portion of the program. And I hope if you don't mind, I'm going to ask a couple of personal questions. As a high-performing investor in the CVC space, I mean, you're really doing an interesting. You got a set of interesting activities and playing a leadership role in the corporate venture space, and it's been fun to see you on stage at various industry conferences and follow you on social media. Is there anything you're doing on a daily basis that sort of prepares you for sort of that level of professional excellence and high level of activity?
Maybe the one thing I would say is that every single day we breathe and we live our core values, the code of conduct I mentioned earlier, and the contribution to society, one team reaching for the sky, delivering deep insights, entrepreneurs first. Everyone in the team can just tell you them, they know it by heart, and everything they do every day is along these core values.
The other question I'm curious about is you may know that I was part of the Kauffman Fellows program. They have a thought leadership project, and a big part of mine was on strategic planning for life. Sort of how do you start your personal day like you would start a work day, almost with an agenda and a set of objectives for what you're trying to achieve each day. Is there any kind of personal morning routine or something that you find yourself doing to sort of get in the right mindset, get in the right physical condition to kind of take on the day and bring a lot of energy to your team and your colleagues and your profession?
I think, it's going to be a very boring answer, but I start by reading my emails and flush as much as I can that I don't need to respond and just keep the one I need to respond. But I don't respond, I just read them. And then I take a shower, which somehow is helping me to just articulate my thoughts for the day and for what I've seen. And then I just roll with the day. So there is no smart planning. It's really just about taking it in, thinking about it, and then rolling with it.
I like your strategy. I don't know if I'd make it to the shower after reading some of my morning emails. That's my only problem. Thanks so much for allocating a little bit of time. Thanks to you. Thanks to my colleague Pat Bumpus, the producer of this series. Alessandro Santro, my co-chair from the Kauffman Fellows. Thanks again, Nicolas, for taking a little bit of time today. Really appreciate it. That's a wrap for this week's show.
Thank you, Jack.
All right, I'm going to stop recording here.